Kelly Peterson. I'm a student here at JTech. I'm here to talk to you about the steering and the suspension. Now we're going to see how to inspect both of these to see if you have a problem and how to fix it. Okay, so first we will talk about steering. Now before we inspect this, you want to make sure you have your wheels chalked before you do this for safety. Now in the steering system, we'll first start off with our steering shaft, and our steering shaft is connected to our steering wheel. Now when you turn your steering wheel, it's connected to this gearbox, and this gearbox is basically what helps with all your steering throughout your wheels. So now this gearbox, when you turn your steering shaft, it goes through this gearbox. This gearbox converts that movement to the pitman arm. Now this pitman arm then moves through the drag link, pulls it back to the then connects to the steering arm, which pulls the steering arm to help you turn. Now, when checking these components, you want to make sure there's nothing loose. You want to make sure everything is greased down properly. Make sure there's no leaks. Make sure all your holes are nice and tight and no leakage anywhere. Nothing loose. Now, some places you have grease fittings. You want to make sure you grease them down. Yeah. Okay, so right here we have our tie rod in, and it's connected to a tube. So that tube is connected to the other side of the vehicle, and basically when you turn, it helps turn the wheels from this side all the way to the other side. And also with that turning is you have your steering knuckle and your kingpin. Now the steering knuckle and kingpin are very important because they're like the heart of turning. So like when you turn your steering wheel, the kingpin has that movement, that flexible movement, so you can turn your wheel. Now you want to make sure that your kingpin is right. And the way to do this is you'll have the truck jacked up, and you'll have somebody kind of lift up on the wheel. And if you'll have while they're lifting up on the wheel, you check the kingpin to make sure is there any movement. Now if there's any movement in there, you have to change your kingpin up because this is bad for your steering, and it'll be too loose. You also want to make sure when you're done that when you change your kingpin out, you grease it properly. Okay, so this bolt right here is called a stop bolt. Now this bolt basically limits the turning radius of your turns, and you want to make sure that this bolt isn't loose or anything, and you have zero clearance when you're turning. You want to make sure there's not too much space so you won't turn too much. Okay, so while you're checking all your steering components, if there's like anything loose or any problems, you'll mostly hear like kind of clinking and banging around kind of. Or when you're turning, you'll have too much free play, and free play is really bad because that means it's too much turn, and you won't have your steering won't be right. So you want to make sure that when you're checking everything, you check it properly and make sure you have nothing loose, so you'll have less free play. Okay, so on to the suspension. Now the suspension has some leaf springs, U-bolts, and shock absorbers. Now you want to make sure that everything's tight on these. Nothing loose, especially with your U-joints, because that can cause your leaf springs to be loose. And also on your leaf springs, you want to make sure you have no cracks or anything like that in them, because this is very dangerous. Same with your shock absorbers. And you also have your axle right here. Now this axle also called an I-beam. This is what helps with driving, braking, and steering. Now you want to make sure there's no cracks or anything in this, because if it is, you most likely have to get it replaced. You can't weld anything on there because you'll weaken the metal and then it'll make it worse. So you want to make sure that there's no cracks or anything in your I-beam axle. Also, you want to make sure you do this all around the vehicle, not just on one side. Make sure you do this all around the vehicle and make sure there's no cracks in your frame or axle like that. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about here is wheel alignment. So we have three primary angles when it comes to this. You have your camber, your caster, and your toe. Now camber is where your tire is tilted like this or like this. So posture camber is when it's out like this, and negative is when it's in. So camber, if you have too much or too less of it, it'll make your tire wear unevenly and it won't be right. Now caster is when you look at the side of it and you have your axis like this, or this. So positive is like this and negative is like this. When you have too much of that, it makes your driving stability uneven and your driving return bad too. And your last thing is toe. Now toe is when you have your when you have the tires, when you look at the front of them, and they're like this, the front of them like this or like this. So this is toe out, toe in, and toe out. What you if you have too much of that, then you have feather edge on your tire. And on these trucks, you want to make sure that it's set to 1/8 toe in, and also your camber is kind of, you have a little bit on positive. You don't want it too much negative, like positive. And that's all I have to say. So thank you. Have a great day.